bigger than ever. Every year the 4th of July gets celebrated, but as you know, this week was a little different, 250 years. The fireworks were bigger, the festivals were busier, the parades were louder. But I also know that those weren't the only differences this year. Because for some of you, the feelings of love and patriotism towards your country were stronger than you've ever felt. I know there were others of you that had feelings of shame and disappointment in your country that were stronger than you've ever felt. But whether you feel a strong sense of love for your country or you feel the exact opposite, it makes no difference because we are all citizens of a country. We all live under the rule of a government. So what does citizenship really entail? Maybe you can remember back to grade school social studies where you're taught that being a good citizen means that you vote and you pay your taxes. But as Christians, we actually learn what citizenship looks like from Jesus himself. There was a group of people trying to trap Jesus. They were trying to get him to say the wrong thing about both God and his country. Here's the account of that happening. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. "Teacher," they said, "we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, so they left him and went away. This was a trap. Political traps aren't just a brand new 21st century thing. We see this happening 2,000 years ago. And these two groups, the Pharisees and the Herodians, were enemies. They didn't get along at all. But one thing they were happy to do together was trip up Jesus and get him in trouble. If Jesus had said, pay taxes to Caesar, then the Pharisees were there, ready to call him a traitor, causing him to lose all of his influence among his own people, the Jews. But if Jesus would have said, "No, don't pay your taxes," then the Herodians were there, ready to arrest him on the spot because not paying taxes was illegal. So Jesus knew their trap, and he knew exactly what to say. And he almost says both things. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And this answer wasn't Jesus just pandering to both groups. Jesus is actually teaching us a lesson about what it looks like to live in an earthly kingdom while at the same time living in God's kingdom. And God's kingdom is everywhere that he rules, which is over everything and also in our hearts. So, being a citizen of both kingdoms means giving to the government what belongs to them and giving to God what belongs to him. But that's easier said than done. This is a challenge. Because sometimes we can give too much to the government and in turn give less to God. For example, maybe you think of a politician or a political party or the government so highly that you think that they can't ever make a mistake and you are ready to back them up no matter what they say and no matter what they do. Maybe you think so highly of a political party that who you voted for starts to become your identity. and you spend all your time arguing for them and defending them because you love them so much. Maybe you've treated a person or a politician as God because you've treated them like they can actually solve every problem. And when you do that, you could be putting all your trust in the government rather than putting all your trust in God. Or you can think so little of a politician or a political party or your government that you live in fear and terror while they're in power. Maybe you've talked like the world has lost all hope and there's absolutely nothing good that can happen. Maybe you think so little of a leader that you are incapable of recognizing when they actually do something helpful. And when they do something helpful, you think and say, they did that? Well, then that must be terrible. And when we think this way, rather than putting all of our trust in God, we are putting all of our emotions and energy and fear and terror into the government. But the opposite of giving too much to the government is giving too little to it. In our second reading this morning, Romans 13, Paul teaches us that the government, even though it's full of humans, is not just a human thing. No, the government has been instituted by God himself. That doesn't mean that God has endorsed democracy. It doesn't mean that God chose the president, and it doesn't mean that God decides who's in power. But what it does mean is that while we live in this world, we have been given the incredible gift of a government whose job is to promote peace and to punish evil within our country. And Paul was crystal clear. He said that everyone is subject to the government. So what that means is, unless the government is explicitly commanding you to sin against God, then you should do what they ask of you because this is who God has put in place. You might not like a system of taxes, but that doesn't give you the freedom to cheat on them because that's what the government asks of you. You might highly dislike someone who is in a position of authority, but that doesn't mean that you can openly disrespect them. You shouldn't be wishing for the worst thing to happen to them. You shouldn't be joining in with the newest hateful thing to say about them. And this is true whether it's today or it's 4 years ago, because the government is who God has put in place. And with all that said, I know we've all got opinions. You have feelings when you hear a politician say something. You might have a reaction when you hear that one of your friends voted for the opposite party. And that's what makes giving to the government what is theirs and giving to God what is his so challenging. But you can do this well when you recognize what it really means to be a citizen of God's kingdom. God is the one on the seat of power in his kingdom. And God is far greater and far better than any government or politician that this world has ever seen or ever will see. And we could talk about all of God's characteristics and all of the ways that God is far greater and better, but I want to emphasize two today. God is all-knowing and God is all-powerful. So first, God is all-knowing. To the government, you really are just a number. You're a social security number. You're a driver's license number. You pay a certain number in taxes every single year, and that's okay. That's how a government with millions of people under it has to act. That's just how humans work. But God is different because God actually knows you. Your life would be different if you knew the president that would work in your favor. And in the far greater and better kingdom of God, you do have a close personal relationship with the King. He knows you personally. He knows you as way more than just a number, but as his dear child who was worth the death of his own son. And he not only knows you, he knows everything else too. Maybe thinking about all of the classified stuff that the government has makes you a little nervous. Supposedly there's all these things that the government knows that we don't, and that's a little unsettling. But there is no such thing as something new to God. He's not waiting for what's going to be found in the Epstein files. He's not wondering what the government knows about possible UFO sightings. There is no such thing as new, world-changing information to God that's going to turn his world upside down, because God is all-knowing. He created all of this. He knows all of this. And he not only knows about it, he's got power over it. Do you want to know a pretty terrifying fact about power? According to reports, there are enough nuclear weapons in the world right now to destroy this world 70 times over. That's insane. That gives me goosebumps just to think about. And when you hear something like that, it feels like something that is just so out of your control. Like there is just this group of people that have this ability to press a red button on their desk and start this destruction at any time. And it might be out of your control, but it's not out of God's control. God has power over the most terrifying possible scenario that you can think of. God has power over the biggest world war and over the smallest little political decision passed by a bill in Congress. God has power over everything. There is nothing that is outside of God's power. And so, as a citizen of God's kingdom, you are equipped to be a citizen in this world's kingdom. In fact, as a Christian, you are equipped to be the best citizen, because we know what so many people don't: that God is in power over every ruler. So when you are being a good citizen and you are honoring and respecting your government, you're not just honoring and respecting humans. It's more than that. You are honoring the very thing that God has put in place. And no matter what, the government doesn't have all the power. God has all the power. So you, being a good citizen, can look like praying for your government. Pray for the people whose job is to promote peace and punish the evil within our country. Pray for your leaders, whether it's 2026 or it's 2022 or it's 2030. If the government wants you to pay taxes, you should pay them because that's what belongs to them. If the government has laws, you should obey them because this is what God has instituted. And you are actually being a good citizen when you care about politics. When you vote in a country that wants you to vote, when you educate yourself in a country that gives a lot of power to its people. And like I said before, these things are a challenge. There is so much more that can be said about all of this, but just like Pastor Nathan said, if you want to talk about it, please do. I would love to talk about it with you. I know Pastor Nathan would too. And as a citizen of both kingdoms, also give to God what is God's. And that looks like what I talked about last week with loving well. First, you should put all of your trust in the all-knowing and all-powerful God. Don't put your trust in the government. And the second thing is that you should love your neighbor. As a Christian, politics shouldn't be a divisive thing for you. In fact, if politics are the very thing that is getting in the way of you loving your family or loving somebody at work, then politics or the government has become too important for you. God tells us to love our neighbor, love the people in our lives, regardless of the sticker on the back of their car or what you've seen them post online. And don't let politics be the thing that prevents somebody else from loving you. Let the people in your life not know your identity as who you vote for, but that you're a Christian. And again, I'm going to say this one last time. This can be hard. But here's what I want you to remember. Whether this nation stands for 1 more year or 250 more years, you are a citizen of a much greater kingdom. And in that kingdom, you give to God what is God's. When you trust that there is nothing that can happen in this country or in any other country that can change your citizenship in God's kingdom, because his kingdom is over every kingdom. So whatever emotions you've been experiencing this week about your country, take a step back and recognize the greater kingdom that you are a citizen of. Don't give all of your emotions and energy to the government. God's in control of that. Instead, give to the government what they ask of you, and then put all of your trust in the all-knowing and all-powerful God who rules over everything. Amen.